All right, well, let's have a look at this now. We know that Arsenal's defense was recently breached at the weekend in what was such an entertaining game against Sunderland. And just have a look at some of the I suppose you could talk about the records that Arsenal were putting in terms of that defense. 10-game winning streak in all competitions snapped, and it was the first time that they conceded 2 goals since May 11th against Liverpool. Well, our Rodra from ESPN, he managed to catch up with David Raya, and this is what he had to say.
Is that the first team that could sort of match Arsenal's physicality?
I think in the Premier League anyone can match the physicality. It's just the way they play, the way they approach the game, and they know their strengths. They just come up from the Championship, and obviously that league is very, very physical. So no, it's just credit to them. They're doing a really, really good season. Where they haven't lost a game at home, and they've been beaten and getting points from the big teams. So full credit to Sunderland. They're a tough team to beat.
What's like playing behind this current Arsenal backline, and what makes them so difficult to get past?
Well, I think the difficulty is that we love to defend, the love of defending, the love of not conceding, not even goals, not just chances, trying to stop the teams further up the pitch with the pressing that we do. And then if they push us back into a low block, it's just that love of defending to not let the ball go into the box.
Which of Arsenal's new signings have you been most impressed by, and why?
I think Martin Zubimendi, is a player that is very, very clever. He adapted very, very well into the league, where there's a lot of players that it take a little bit longer to adapt, and especially in his role, he's just adapted so quick, and you can see what he does for the team.
How impressed have you been by Max Dowman, and what's like sharing a dressing room with a 15-year-old?
He's 15, he's turning 16 at the end of the year, and he's incredible. Obviously we don't share that much in the dressing room because he's not allowed with the rules and everything, but sharing the pitch is the maturity that he shows on the pitch, the willingness that he has to just to enjoy and to be himself, to take on players, and always with a smile on his face is incredible. Seeing we've been training with him since he was 14 years old, so very, very impressed with him and his qualities as a player.
Arsenal's David Raya there, of course, now on international duty with España. Don Hutchison is back with us, but Jules, let me start with you. What stood out to you from what Raya had to say?
I thought it was really interesting about the love of defending, the art of defending. The Arsenal defence is clearly something else. I know Sunderland scored twice, and to be fair, the boys were very disappointed. Not so much you can concede 2 goals in a game. It can happen, and you can face a team that scores a great goal, and there's nothing even the best defenders in the world could do about it. However, the 2 goals at Sunderland were both really avoidable if you think about them. The first one is a long ball. Wright doesn't win the duel. Gabriel is a bit short on the second ball. The second goal, I'm not sure Raya needs to come out the way he does. Gabriel is outmuscled by Brobbey. So the 2 goals that would have been really frustrated for them, because usually they're very good in those situations. So a lot still shows that there's a lot to work for, again, to avoid those kind of goals in a few more games. But even with that draw and the 2 goals conceded against Sunderland, it's still a very good start of the season, considering who they played against, and especially the away games in that list of fixtures, really. And on Max Dowman, it's funny because, as he says, and I'm not sure if many of the people watching our show knows about that, but he can't go into the dressing room, he's too young, so he changes in another dressing room on his own, and then just joins up with the team on the pitch. He still goes to school. He came back from the Champions League game against Slavia Prague when he broke that record of the youngest ever Champions League player appearance, and the next day he had school in the morning. So it's pretty incredible.
Bless.
Well, you look at me? No, I don't.
You had a young start.
Yeah, but at 15 I was not in a professional locker room, and neither is Max for that matter.
He can't be.
What's funny in some ways is when they ask him about, which one of the new signings has impressed you the most, and it's Martin Zubimendi. Hey Martin, how are you?
Martin,
how's it going?
right beside me.
Yeah, this guy right here, Martin. Yeah, well, you mean my teammate with the national team? Oh yeah, Martin. But Martin Zubimendi has been impressive. And while he was a good player at Real Sociedad, the question was, well, can he adapt to the quote-unquote physicality of the Premier League? Can he adapt to the pace of play of the Premier League? And I think what he has proven that he's been able to do so far is that in reading the game, he's able to overcome some of that lack of speed or some of that physicality. He doesn't have to get on the duels if he's able to win the ball ahead of the duel, ahead of the fight, or if he's able to step into a passing lane that then forces the ball somewhere else. So it's not Martin Zubimendi's game to be winning 50-50 challenges. He is more of a ball player, sort of playmaker, defensive holding midfielder, but a guy who's not interested in having this back and forth. And he does that because he's able to read the game properly. I think he has been really good for Arsenal. And I think he has impressed more people than, or has impressed people more than they would have thought he would add to this team. Has added a lot.
All right, well, let's have a look at the Premier League title odds, shall we? And this probably wouldn't surprise everyone that despite dropping points this weekend, Arsenal still very much favourites to win it. And then Manchester City and Liverpool, of course, have fallen in those odds, as well as Chelsea. But forget title odds, let's be honest. We've got Don Hutchison, the Don, I love my percentages, Hutchison. So Don, hit me with some percentages now in terms of the title and the title race.
I'll keep this one very simple. Chelsea, 0. Liverpool, 0. They ain't coming back from here. And I'm going to go a genuine 50-50. But I've been waiting for this day, Alexis, for about 3 or 4 days. Ali, my friend, I did tell you the Sunderland game would be difficult for Arsenal. And you laughed me out of town. And I did say the Sunderland game and 3 London derbies on the spin would be the test for Arsenal. So big up Sunderland. They deserve their point. Title race, 50-50.
Well, I feel like I have to respond since
You do.
my name was brought up.
Shots were fired.
Right. First, I am flattered that I am so comfortable living in Don's head that he's been thinking about this for 3 or 4 days
Rent-free.
just to get the opportunity
Rent-free.
to say this. And my point was then as it is now. If Arsenal's shortcomings in getting to the title is because they couldn't get a result at Sunderland, they have bigger issues. That cannot be the explanation as to why they don't win the title. There will be bigger games for Arsenal in the future than away at Sunderland. As good a start as Sunderland has had, and as good a result as that was for Sunderland, that is not enough to climb up to the level of this is why Arsenal won't win a title. And if that's the case, again, I repeat, they have bigger issues.
Well, Jules, we talked about this on the show the other day, the fact that Manchester City have chased down Arsenal before and how sometimes it is easier to chase than to lead. Arsenal have been in this situation before and have lost out to City. Don now, though, is saying that it's 50-50 for either of them to win the title. Do you really think it's that close?
I was at City on Sunday for the Liverpool game. It's the first time that I saw them live this season. Usually it's on television. I was very impressed by what I saw from City, the tactical evolution from Guardiola, what he's implementing to this team, the overloaded midfield, the positioning of Doku, the form of Foden and Bernardo Silva, plus Haaland. Obviously, while Shirky is still finding his feet a little bit, but getting there, I think this could turn into a very, very good season for Manchester City, or certainly a very good team again from City, far from what we saw at this stage last year, for example. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. I still think that Arsenal have to be favourite because they're 4 points clear to start with, because they've played City already, albeit at the Emirates, but we've already had a game between them two, and both have played Liverpool too. So I think this is a decent advantage for Arsenal to have more than a quarter into the season already. But I think it would be very tight. I would give it maybe 60-40 for Arsenal, but I think at the end of the season, City and Arsenal will be very close to each other.
Oh, wow, how everyone has changed their song.
Well, you know why Don settled on 50-50.
Why?
He doesn't have to do math.
Jules did some math.
No. It was a tiny little bit deeper than that, Ali. It was. I mean, you are correct in the math, I'll give you that. But there's a little bit of method to the madness. I mean, this is a side that hasn't won the title for 21 years. And they've got Man City chasing them down, who's done this twice to them already. So, I think we're going to be in.
Okay. All right, let's turn our attentions to Arsenal because they're 4 points clear at the top and appear to be benefiting from their recruitment in the previous windows. Dance, do you think they'll go again in January?
Look, it's not a window where Arsenal are usually that active. The last time I think that they signed major players for the first team squad was back in 2023. January 2023, Leandro Trossard came in. He's
not a bad signing.
Jorginho, you could say, was a success as well. Jakub Kiwior came in that window as well. He's since gone out on loan with the view to a permanent deal as well. So maybe that one didn't work as much as Arsenal would have wanted. So I'm not expecting Arsenal to be that busy in January unless one of two things were to happen. There's a major injury before then, which they did have last January when Gabriel Jesus injured his ACL, and he's only on his way back now. But I think all the Arsenal fans then were imploring the club to bring in a striker. And I think Arsenal were very well aware that they needed to bring someone in. But I think they wanted to keep their powder dry a little bit because they had longer term plans. And if they had signed someone like Ollie Watkins, who they went for, there was a big differential in the price between what Villa wanted and what Arsenal were prepared to pay, up to £20 million.
Gosh.
And Arsenal weren't prepared to bridge that gap. So they said, let's not do it in this transfer window. We have got other longer term targets that we can exercise in the summer. So that's one reason if there's an injury, or if a long term target or a market opportunity that's far too good to turn down presents itself. And that in itself is a rarity in a January transfer window. And if you add on to that, Captain Martin Odergard, Noni Madueke, Gabriel Jesus, Kai Havertz, Victor Gyökeres, Gabriel Martinelli, they're all currently out injured at the moment. And they are all expected to come back, well, the majority of them, once the international break is over. And towards the end of the year, you should see all of those players back. And for some of them who haven't played the entire season, it's almost acting like the old cliche, it's like a new signing. So the squad looks like it is built to challenge on all fronts this season, and it doesn't look like at the moment, can change of course, that they'll need to reinforce in January.
Terrifying for the rest of the league, you'd have to say. Let's talk about Andre Berta, because that was his first window, wasn't it? How do you feel that he's settled in then?
I mean,
big shoes to fill after
the general
Eddie,
consensus is it's been a success so far because they had a massive transfer window in the summer, his first summer transfer window at the club. They're 4 points clear at the top of the Premier League. By and large, all of the signings that he's brought in have contributed. Now, he is the driving force behind the recruitment at the club, but it should also be said that back in 2020, Arsenal changed Mikel Arteta's title. And it was quite significant, actually, because he turned from a head coach to a manager. Now, Alan probably better throw a bit more light on that and the differences that entails. But for Arteta to become a manager, he has a say in all the transfer activity. I'm not saying a head coach doesn't, but that subtle change in the title would imply that he would have a voice, and quite a big voice, when it comes to recruitment. Now, he's spoken publicly, has Mikel Arteta, about how the board, Andrea Berta and himself, have worked in unity together, especially in this last transfer window, because there was quite a lot of upheaval earlier on in the year when Edu left the club, and it came as a surprise to everyone at the football club. But then they managed to recruit someone like Andrea Berta, who's got a huge standing in European football, and it looks like everyone's working together in a way that Arsenal always wanted it to work. And the proof is where they are in the league and the signings that they've made. I just wanted to ask Alan, actually, on that point about manager and head coach, but also you've managed for so long that you've been in the era where there hasn't been sporting directors to an era where there have been sporting directors. You've even been a sporting director yourself. What were the differences before and after for you?
Well, of course, one of the problems you had when you're managing in the Premier League, and the bigger the league got, the more pressure there was on you in terms of performances. The squads were getting bigger. the finance was getting bigger. It was getting more and more difficult to keep your eye focused on transfers. And I think it was a natural progression that we were going to get a technical director, a transfer team, analysts that were going to go through all the videos and go through all the data. So now it's like a whole team of people that are in charge of transfers. But of course, whether you're head coach or manager, you've still got a massive influence in that room. So when it comes to the transfer, ultimately Arteta will be saying yes.
So he got the ultimates then? So, or is it who's in charge of that?
If Arteta said no,
right,
for example, they would have a major problem, and they know that.
Okay.
They don't want to lose the manager. The manager's in a good mode. What you got to remember about the ownership of a football club, you've got to have unison with the manager. You've got to. Right, and if you fall out or you start getting friction in that relationship, then you have got problems. And Nottingham Forest have had that issue with Nuno this year in particular, where Edu and the whole thing seemed to fall apart. So it is an important role, and it's when you're getting on and when you're winning and the transfers are all looking great, then everybody's happy. It's only when the errors come and the fingers start getting pointed where you put him up or.
But it sounds like then there with Nuno, then the sporting director won.
Well, I don't know if he won. I wouldn't say he won.
But it was Nuno that ultimately left the club, wasn't it?
Nuno ended up at West Ham manager. So he won as well. He got Forest and he got a new club.
But you hear where I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, of
but
course.
It sounds like you said there was a...
I didn't say there was a problem between Nuno and Edu. I was saying there was a problem between the three of them. Because actually, that is an important relationship. One of his jobs as a technical director, who said to me, you know, and I did that role, was my job was to protect the manager, mainly. That was how I felt, from the owner. The owner was a very emotional person, you know. Manager's got to go, you know, this is not right, and I'll be like, oh, it's okay, give him time.
Well done, Alan.
Yeah, well, of course. But that is a technical director's job. It is almost to try, in the calm light of day, like on a Tuesday after a Saturday game, to bring some realism to the result. To say, okay, well, the XG was great, you know, and we had great performances, okay, the result didn't go away, and calm the owner down. And so you get that. And if you get that relationship with the manager and the technical director working together and on transfers, then you got a winning mentality.
Just in your managerial career, particularly when you worked with a sporting director, was there ever a time you were saying if there's not unison, then there's a problem?
Yeah.
Was there ever a signing at any of your clubs that was made that you were saying, this is not a good idea, I don't want this player? And what was the end result?
Yeah, the end result is there was a few that got signed. And actually, one of the...
Are you going to name any?
Yeah, no. One, there's a funny story because Alan Carr, who's just won Traitors, who's brilliant, right?
We loved it,
Some people have got it on record.
Oh, sorry.
They haven't. It's too late for that.
His father was Graham Carr, the famous manager, of course, right? And he was my chief scout at Newcastle. And when I went, he was very powerful at Newcastle, and he had an opinion about a player that was very difficult to kind of budge. So he was like, yes, 100% we should have him, and I was like, oh, no, I don't think so. We should sign him. And I'm going to give you an example to sort of clarify how that went. So I was at Southampton previous to Newcastle, and I wanted to sign Adam Lallana for Newcastle, and I was quite adamant about it. I want Adam Lallana. Graham Carr was like, well, Adam Lallana is a great player for Southampton, but this is Newcastle. This is a step up. I don't think he's good enough. And I'm saying, well, I've actually coached him, and I'm coaching the players at Newcastle. So you have those kind of conversations. We didn't fall out over it, but you know, you be strong in that room, and the owner has to make a call. And in that particular instance, obviously, we did not sign Adam Lallana, so he won. But that, well, I wouldn't say one, because I think that's a little bit unfair, but that is the kind of conversations that you have around the table, and that's natural.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
But when you get in unison and you're really kind of in tune with each other, the technical director and the manager, that is the perfect scenario. And of course, that still needs to happen between the technical director and the owner, and the manager and the owner.
And it feels like Arteta's really lucky because he had it with Eddie.
It sounds
now
like
seems
he's got a very good
Roberto.
relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, what have you got for us?
Wow, Adam Lallana nearly at Newcastle. What a story that was. There was over £3 billion spent in what was a record-breaking summer transfer window. Next, we'll take a look at who's been a hit and who needs to start firing.
Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Let's get to one of today's news lines. Ivan Toney is attracting interest from a number of Premier League clubs. So, will we see the striker back in the Premier League before too long? And that's the question. He's attracting a lot of interest, understandably, Mark.
Yeah, rightly so, because he's a goal scorer. He's 29 years old. He's scored goals in the Premier League. And he brings the type of profile of striker that most managers would like to have in their squad. 29 goal involvements in 30 league games last season. We know the Saudi Pro League is just in the start of their current campaign, and he's already in the goals as well. There are a number of Premier League clubs that are currently exploring the option, the possibility, whether they can get a deal over the line for Ivan Toney, whether he would want to come back to the Premier League, and whether financially it could make sense. Of course, the reason why perhaps Ivan Toney is a talking point right now is because he's not in Thomas Tuchel's England squad. The last time he played for Thomas Tuchel and England was in June, and whilst he was in the Saudi Pro League, and Thomas Tuchel said, I'm not going to overlook Ivan Toney just because he's not playing in one of the big leagues in Europe or the Premier League. If he's doing the business, I'm still going to look at him. Right now, he's not in that England squad, so that's why there is this noise around Ivan Toney potentially coming back to the UK. It's definitely one to keep an eye on. I think finances will dictate what possibly could happen, because it would be a challenging one financially to make happen. But there are a number of Premier League sides that are saying, if we can make it work, we would love to have Ivan Toney.
Yeah, it's interesting. We ran a poll on our app asking which club would suit Toney the best. You have the results are in, as they say.
The results are in from the jury.
Yes.
And right now, actually, on the SkySports.com website, you can have your say. Manchester United is the team leading the way with 32% of the vote. People saying that's where Ivan Toney would fit in. That would be perfect for him. Second, Tottenham, 21%. The reason why that's interesting, of course, because a certain Thomas Frank, and hugely influential in developing him as a player, took him to Brentford whilst they were in the Championship, and then continued that form in the Premier League. So you could see that relationship working there. And just finally, Brentford, 3%, a return to his old club.
Yeah, I mean, Everton as well, I think we're up there in there, because I did have a sneaky look myself. And I mean, Barry, Beto or Ivan Toney, I mean, I'm guessing that would be quite a nice conundrum for Mr. Moyes, wouldn't it?
Well, Ivan Toney, you know, not only is he an asset in terms of his credentials and everything else, but now the game is kind of developing into set plays and long throws. Can you imagine Ivan Toney, how influential he'd be on those? So, you know, he gives you a lot of dimension to your team. I think it'd be a great signing. I just think the accountant will have to do some work to get him over the line, because the tax issues and everything else are all in bringing a player from Saudi Arabia very complicated and very costly. So I think it's unlikely. If I was to choose a home, I would say Tottenham would be his probably favourite. I think they're really short at the top of the pitch, and he could answer a few questions there.
How realistic is it, Calvé?
I think the tax implications are huge, because one of the reasons players move to Saudi Arabia with respect to the Saudi Pro League is the fact that you earn huge money there, and it's also tax-free. Now, if you were to come back to the UK before a certain period of time, then HMRC would want you to pay UK tax on the money that you earn in Saudi Arabia as well. So it could potentially cost somebody like Ivan Toney tens of millions of pounds if he was to return to play in the Premier League. So from a football perspective, I can understand it would be a really good move for him to come back to the Premier League. The World Cup is coming up. I thought when he played during the last Euros, he did really well, scored a fantastic no-look penalty as well. I can understand why he needs to be back in the Premier League to get back in the England squad, but is it worth paying that much tax? I mean...
Well, Alan, I mean, is it worth? paying that much tax to get in yourself in the World Cup squad and score a no-look penalty in the final?
Well, he's 29. I don't see him coming back for anything other than the situation he's gone out there for, which is obviously a financial reasons. Otherwise, he would have stayed in the Premier League. There was enough Premier League club interest, but obviously Saudi Arabia, the finance was such that he couldn't turn it down. So now to sort of say to him, oh, you're going to come back now and you're going to pay tax on all that money, no, I don't see that happening. So my gut feeling is he won't come back. But having said that, you know, this is I just feel a little bit disappointed for him, because when Thomas, and we've heard this from English managers before, when players move abroad, well, it's okay, that won't affect me picking you, but he hasn't picked him. He's still scoring goals in Saudi Arabia. Why hasn't he picked him? I think he should travel to the World Cup, even if he stays in Saudi Arabia. Personally, I think he's a great addition to the playing staff that we have in that group.
What would he bring that perhaps others on the periphery of that role?
Well, the one thing I liked about him when he played for England, and the one thing I like about him as a player, he has no fear. You're talking about a player here who has cast iron confidence, you know, and we talked about penalties maybe being a major issue in the World Cup finals, which they always are. Well, Ivan Toney would be a useful tool then, with 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go and replace a striker and also be penciled in to take a penalty. So it's his attitude and the technical ability that he brings as a centre forward that I think can't be ignored, and that's why when his name's put around in the media like it has today, but there are going to be interest. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I think out loud, what about if he just came on loan, joined a Premier League club in January on loan to May, put himself in the shop window, goes to the World Cup, and then goes back to Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, but what you got to respect Saudi Arabian league as well. And do you think they would want to do that? You know, they're trying to build the structure of their league and make it a world league like the Premier League. So that wouldn't work for them, and I don't see them doing that.
Do you think he'd be a good signing for West Ham potentially? Could he fit into the way Nuno plays? I mean, he had Chris Wood at Forest. Could he do a similar sort of job? Be the sort of focal point?
Let me call Nuno now and ask him. I actually know the answer without actually calling him. Absolutely, of course. And West Ham fans, wow, they're starved of, you know, any kind of success over the last sort of year. So, and they're in a terrible situation. They're right in it. Although the last 2 wins have been so important. 100%. He would fit in at West Ham.
You can make a case for so many teams in the Premier League right now. You really could. Okay. All right, stay with us. Will we see teams in the relegation battle spend big in the January transfer window? On the way, we're going to discuss that, which includes Alan's old club. Sorry about this. West Ham, of course. Right, welcome back. Let's talk Chelsea now. They made more than they spent in the summer. So will they continue to spend in January? And that's the question to you, Carve. What do you think their strategy will be?
Well, I think Chelsea are working really hard on signings, but not for January. They're focusing on preparing, signings for the summer of next year and also the summer of 2027. I know some Chelsea fans want the club to sign a new goalkeeper. That's not going to happen in January. Some Chelsea fans want them to sign another centre-back. That's not going to happen in January. Some fans want them to sign another defensive midfielder because Romeo Lavia is injured a lot of the time. Dario Asugo, who came in this summer, is out injured as well. A lot has been asked of Moises Caicedo, but Chelsea are not going to be signing a defensive midfielder this January either. I think a club the size of Chelsea, their business is really focused on summer windows. So I would expect it to be pretty quiet, but I think they're going to have a big summer next summer and also summer 2027.
You mentioned Moises Caicedo. There's a case for him to be arguably the best midfielder in the world right now. I mean, he's just, I mean, I don't want to say it's a one-man team because it certainly isn't, but he's really starting for Chelsea right now, isn't he? Well,
I was there Friday and, he's such a kind of clever player in that he covers the ground, covers the picture. You know, there's a picture forming and he kind of gets himself in the middle of it. So that whatever you're trying to create as the opposing team, he kind of snuffs it out. So that's his art. He's efficient with the ball. His relationship with Hernandez, obviously a World Cup winner, is terrific. I think, Chelsea are very, very strong in that particular area. I don't see them strengthening or looking to strengthen there. And the one beauty of Caicedo is that he's always available. He's hardly ever not playing. So that's a great benefit to a team to have a player who's always there. I remember at Crystal Palace, Will Zaha was never injured. He's always getting fouled and brought down, but was always available. And the importance of that, not just for the team, but for results, is massive. So he's been an unbelievably great signing for Chelsea, and very much in the top kind of that pivot player, that number 6, the top 3-4 in the world for sure.
We do have an update on him actually this evening. There's been talk that he may be getting a new Chelsea contract to reward him for his performances. My understanding of the situation is that his contract already, basically Chelsea, I think, have him tied down until 2033. So they're not going to be. They're not.
Quite the distance, isn't it?
There's nothing wrong with 8-year contracts.
Exactly. I don't know why.
So you're on here.
Why are you going on?
He got one at.
I remember.
That sounds short to me.
7 years, wasn't it? You're still getting paid by Newcastle.
Yeah.
Has that run out now? The Newcastle.
It's still going. No, it's ongoing.
No, but seriously, just go back to Moises Caicedo. He won't, I think, be getting a new Chelsea contract because he's contracted until 2033. But I think what is going to happen behind the scenes in private is that the terms of his present deal are going to be improved. I think.
But that's a new contract then.
It's not a new contract.
It's not an extra limit.
Contract, isn't it? Yeah.
I think it'll be a pay rise.
Well, it's an improved contract.
But it won't be. He won't be actually signing a new deal with new terms. It will just be
extra money in the bank account.
Yeah, we're going to recognise the fact that you've been playing so well, so we're going to give you a pay rise.
Isn't that the right way to do it?
And we're not going to announce it. It's not going to be done in public.
I don't think
it's
that's
something
possible.
that'll be done privately.
I don't think that's possible. I think the length of the contract can not change. That's okay. But I think the improved terms.
But Chelsea do have these. They do have these contracts that are sort of heavily incentivised. So the players are actually on relatively low base wages compared to other clubs the size of Chelsea. But if you play well and you perform, then you're rewarded. And I think Chelsea's position is that, of course, he's playing fantastically well, and we've got a great relationship with him and his representatives. So, of course, we're going to reward him, but we don't want to have the whole song and dance of announcing that we're going to be giving him a new contract.
It might have been in his contract originally that if you
But Palmer signed a new deal, right?
Performances, yeah.
Palmer signed a new deal,
but it's not
on the back of a long contract. But the point being that I think the Chelsea model makes sense to me because they're signing a lot of young players, and if you are successful, then we will renegotiate. And I think that's probably the message sent to the training ground. If you want to play like Caicedo, you want to play like Palmer, then you'll get rewarded.
Just on Caicedo very quickly, has it been even more impressive that we're not talking about his transfer fee at all anymore? It seems to be the same case with Declan Rice as well. These two players have performed so well, and yet there was so much talk about £100 million plus that they paid for these players at the time, and we don't hear anything about their transfer fees anymore. If anything, would it be fair to say that both of those players, even though they cost 105 and 115 million pounds respectively, they have actually increased their transfer value now?
Well, possibly, but it just goes to show you the importance of that pivot role in modern football. It is so important, and Rodri, obviously a Ballon d'Or holder at the moment, is because it releases fullbacks. It can release a centre back if that player is good enough to sit and do that job, plus be able to pass, be able to read the game. And that's why the value of those guys is so important and so much.
Interesting to see what's going to happen with Axel Disasi, because obviously he's been training away from the team, hasn't he? So do you think he'll move in January? What's happening there, Cove?
You know what? I think there's a way back for Axel Disasi now. He was a member of this infamous Chelsea bomb squad last summer, training away from the first team squad. He's been training on his own or training with Raheem Sterling this season. But then on Saturday, he actually captained the Chelsea under-21 side. I think they were playing against Reading. And our information this evening is that he's likely to return to training with the Chelsea first team squad as well. And I think between now and January, he may also play again for the first team. Now, does that mean that he's got a long-term future at Chelsea? I don't think so. I still think it's likely that he's going to leave in January. I think the reason he's going to return to the first team is not because he's got a future necessarily at Chelsea. It's more to get him playing and also to put him in the shop window as well. But obviously behind the scenes, he's been doing something that's impressed Chelsea, because not only did he play for the under-21s, but he captained them, and now we're led to believe that he'll be back in the first team picture as well.
Alan, how usual or unusual is this system that Chelsea seem to have? But I think it does happen at other clubs as well, that players kind of get removed from the core training and they train on their own, and then potentially they come back or they do something else.
I've actually taken that group when I was at Reading, and Tommy Burns was the manager. There's 4 or 5 players, he wanted them to leave the football club, and it is a way of kind of forcing players to look at their futures rather than just plod along, coming into training, think they're going to get a game, not going to get a game. No, you are not involved. So it's a tool for a manager. It's a tool I never used myself. I didn't like it. And it also causes damage to the squad, because players can look at that situation and think, no, well, that could be me in a different situation, and I would never want that. So the club shouldn't be doing that. That is mostly their personal opinion. So it's not something that's liked in the dressing room. Very difficult for the players who are in that position, of course. But sometimes these messages are from above. We want this player to move on for whatever reason, and this is the actions we want you to take. So you get under a lot of pressure as a manager to do that kind of thing. I don't know about this current situation, but actually him coming back to the group makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I'm sure in the dressing room that will be really well received by the other players.
Yeah, and it would be a mark of I say boy, I mean, this is so young, but a mark of the man if he comes back and actually does really well in the team.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. All right, stay with us. We've got plenty more coming your way. Liverpool spent big, didn't they, in the summer, but they've already lost more games in the Premier League than they did last season. We'll assess how their summer signings have.
Mikel Arteta's contradictory comments dismissed after Everton versus Arsenal fixture change. Mikel Arteta has faced criticism from sections of the Arsenal fanbase after the Premier League granted the club's request to move their away fixture against Everton forward by 1 day. However, a closer look at Arteta's statements shows there was no real contradiction in his words, only a misunderstanding of priorities. The change means Arsenal will now face Everton on December 20th, rather than on Sunday the 21st, allowing the Gunners an extra day of rest before their Carabao Cup quarter-final against Crystal Palace. From the club's perspective, it's a sensible move to protect player welfare and performance levels during a congested period. Yet for many supporters, the news came as an inconvenience, and in some cases, a financial burden. Fans who had already booked non-refundable travel and accommodation for the original date could now be out of pocket. In response, Arsenal announced that they would provide coach travel to Liverpool for £10 return, but the gesture didn't stop frustration from spilling over on social media. An Arsenal fixture news account on X, formerly Twitter, at AFC Fixture News, summed up the mood. The away match against Everton has been moved to Saturday, December 20th at 8 p.m. thanks to at Arsenal, Mikel Arteta, and at Sky Sports PL. The last train from Liverpool to London departs at 8:12 p.m. Football for the fans. Replies to the post, from an account with over 40,000 followers, were divided. Some supporters even accused Arteta of contradicting earlier comments where he seemed to emphasize the importance of fan welfare. But is that really the case? Having attended the press conferences where Arteta was asked about the scheduling issues before and after the Crystal Palace quarter-final was announced, it becomes clear his comments were taken out of context. Following Arsenal's win over Brighton in the Carabao Cup fourth round, Arteta was asked whether he feared fixture congestion could become a problem. He responded, "I hope not. If we take care of the well-being of both players and our supporters, we should never get to that point. That's our most important value. We have the best league in the world, and we can't lose that by ignoring what makes it special. If we respect that, I'm sure everything will be fine. This was the first time Arteta mentioned both players and supporters together in this specific context, placing them in the same sentence, not necessarily in the same order of importance. Later, when Arsenal were travelling to Prague for their Europa League win over Slavia, the December 23rd date for the Palace match was confirmed. Asked about the potential scheduling clash, Arteta, visibly serious, said, "Hopefully they move the Premier League game, because it doesn't make any sense to play until that late in December. I'm sure they'll make the right decision." When pressed again about the long-term impact of playing 2 matches in 3 days, he clarified his stance. "As I said before, I'm confident the league will apply the right principles, to prioritize the players first, then the supporters, and to make sure things remain fair for all clubs." In other words, Arteta's position has been consistent. His hierarchy, players first, then fans, reflects the practical realities of management. From a sporting point of view, that's not unreasonable. His job ultimately is to give Arsenal the best chance of winning matches, and playing 2 high-intensity games within 72 hours would compromise that goal while increasing injury risks. That said, the disruption to fans is real and shouldn't be dismissed. Arsenal have tried to mitigate the damage, offering affordable coach travel to Merseyside. It's not an afterthought. The club has made similar efforts before. For instance, earlier this season they organized a chartered train service for the trip to Manchester. The pilot program was later cancelled due to low uptake, but supporters were refunded, and coach travel was again arranged at less than half the train fare. Still, some pointed to restrictions on alcohol consumption on those buses as a reason for the lack of enthusiasm among travelers. A small but telling example of the balancing act clubs face between fan experience and logistical responsibility. As someone traveling to Liverpool on the new date to cover the match, it's easy to empathize with supporters' frustration. Plans are disrupted, and expenses add up. Yet, from a footballing standpoint, it's equally clear why the adjustment was necessary. In the end, the accusation that Arteta betrayed his words doesn't hold up. His comments were consistent with his role, a manager whose first duty is to protect his players and the team's ability to compete. While supporters deserve respect and consideration, ensuring player welfare, and by extension, the club's chances of success, inevitably comes first. The debate highlights a broader tension that runs through modern football, the struggle to balance fan experience with the relentless demands of the sporting calendar. For Arteta, it's not about choosing one over the other, but about finding a way to keep both sides moving in the same direction. The scheduling change has sparked broader discussions about fixture congestion and the growing disconnect between football authorities and match-going supporters. While the Premier League's decision ultimately favored Arsenal's sporting interests, it reignited long-standing frustrations among fans who feel that television broadcasters, rather than clubs or supporters, dictate the modern football calendar. Several supporter groups voiced their disapproval following the announcement. The Football Supporters Association, FSA, released a statement calling for greater transparency in fixture scheduling, emphasizing the financial and logistical strain late changes impose on fans. Once again, supporters are being treated as an afterthought, the statement read. When games are moved at short notice for broadcast or scheduling purposes, fans are left out of pocket. This has to change. These concerns have grown louder in recent years as fixture lists become increasingly congested, with Premier League clubs competing in multiple domestic and international competitions. December, in particular, is notorious for its relentless schedule, and managers have repeatedly warned that player fatigue and injuries are becoming inevitable outcomes of such intensity. Arteta's comments, prioritizing player welfare first, then fans, reflect a reality shared by many top-flight managers. Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, and Erik ten Hag have all voiced similar frustrations about scheduling in recent months. Guardiola, after Manchester City's December fixtures were adjusted for television, remarked that the players are not machines, echoing the same sentiment that underpins Arteta's reasoning. Yet, despite the alignment among managers, fans often find themselves caught in the middle. They shoulder the financial and emotional burden of fixture changes while being told those changes are made in the name of fairness or player protection. In practice, those decisions often serve commercial partners first, particularly broadcasters who push for prime-time slots to maximize viewership. From Arsenal's perspective, the fixture change is undeniably beneficial. Playing Everton on the 20th instead of the 21st gives Arteta's side 2 full days of rest before the Carabao Cup quarter-final against Crystal Palace, an important fixture as the Gunners continue their pursuit of silverware on multiple fronts. It also reduces the risk of injuries at a time when the squad has been stretched thin by European and domestic commitments. Internally, sources close to the club maintain that the request for a schedule adjustment was made solely based on player welfare and sporting integrity, not with disregard for supporters. Arsenal's communication staff are said to have worked closely with fan liaison officers to ensure alternative travel options were available, though they acknowledge that such measures can never fully compensate for the inconvenience caused. Meanwhile, the Premier League defended its decision, citing the need to maintain competitive balance across the fixture list. A league spokesperson explained that changes of this nature are reviewed on a case-by-case basis, and that input from clubs, broadcasters, and local authorities is taken into account. However, critics argue that such explanations have become formulaic, offering little real comfort to fans who consistently bear the consequences of late scheduling shifts. The ripple effects of this incident extend beyond Arsenal. Supporter groups from other clubs have pointed to it as yet another example of how fan priorities are sidelined in the modern game. There are renewed calls for an independent review of fixture planning and for a minimum notice period before changes are approved, proposals that have circulated for years but never gained traction. For Arteta, however, the matter seems settled. His focus remains on maintaining squad fitness and momentum heading into a decisive period of the season. While the debate over priorities will continue, his stance, that the health and performance of players must come first, reflects a pragmatic, if unpopular, truth in modern football. In the end, the controversy around Arsenal's fixture change underscores a growing divide between the business of football and the experience of football. Managers like Arteta operate in a results-driven environment where every decision is judged by points and trophies. Fans, on the other hand, live the consequences of those decisions, in time, travel, and loyalty. The real challenge for English football now lies in bridging that gap, ensuring that the pursuit of success on the pitch doesn't come at the expense of the very people who fill the stands.